Please join me in welcoming today's opening keynote, Val Oswalt, EVP and President of Campbell Snacks. Val will be interviewed by Groceryshop Senior Vice President of Content, Krystina Gustafson.
Great. Well, hi, Val.
How are you?
Doing well. So excited to have you here at Groceryshop.
Thank you. It's actually my first time being here, so quite an introduction.
Yes, awesome. We are thrilled to have you, and I'm very excited about the conversation we are about to have, but I know we have a short video that we'd love to use to just kind of tee up the discussion, so let's go ahead and play that now. Great. Well, that was a lot of fun, and I think it really kind of sets the stage for the discussion we're about to have, because I think probably every single person in this room knows Campbell Snacks, but they maybe aren't aware of the 21 different brands that you guys have in your portfolio. But I would say a real common thread across all of those brands is your approach to creating elevated experiences. Seems maybe somewhat counterintuitive in this sort of economic climate, so I'd love to hear from you about what that means and why it's right for you guys.
So elevated experiences for us is all about raising the bar on snacking. It's about staying ahead of our competition and understanding our consumer needs. And when we talk to our consumers about elevated snacking, they tell us they want something that's unexpected, that's surprising, something that evokes a feeling, and something that fulfills the need state that they have. So when we think about that, we think about snacking not only filling that need state, but also creating this multi-sensorial experience for them. So if they're online shopping and they see this gorgeous, vibrant brand of kettle, and they purchase a habanero lime or a truffle sea salt or buffalo blue flavor that they hadn't seen before, they get it delivered from some drone within 30 minutes, and then they open it up and they smell this amazing flavor. They feel this incredible chip and they taste it. It's creating this holistic, multi-sensorial experience. And for us, that's what snacking is all about. Yeah,
and it's interesting to hear you talk about it in that context, because when I hear it, I think, okay, she must be talking about packaging, she must be talking about flavors, and so how do you approach that from an organizational perspective? Is it really just kind of you coming together across teams to make sure the hard work that the folks working on the flavors, it kind of carries through? Like, how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. It is a cross-functional effort. And I will tell you, the last 2 to 3 years, it was a lot harder to make sure that we were really in sync, especially many of us working virtually. But we're very clear on expectations and on the resource allocation. And we hold ourselves to a really high standard. So we think about things like, quality food that people love, and despite all the tensions in the system, making sure that we never compromise on quality. So every interaction our consumer has with our food is just incredible. Innovating, despite all the challenges that we have, making sure we're pushing ourselves to innovate and think outside the box and really think about what our consumer needs in this moment. And then really making distinctive activations that creates that experience and creates some lightness, despite some of the challenges for our consumers.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, you're talking about sort of resource allocation, and we talked about the fact that you have 21 brands, but you have 8 that you have designated as your power brand. So we'd love to hear a little bit about how that approach to growth differs between your power and your non-power brands.
So yes, with 21 brands, we need to make sure that we're being very deliberate on our resource allocation. And so we segment them. First we start off with full force growth brands, managed for growth, and then scale. And then within that, we have our power brands. And those are the ones with the absolute highest expectations within the portfolio. They're ones that do receive a distortion of resources, whether it's capital allocation, trade, advertising, and even the teams that support those brands. And along with that, we are very clear on what is expected, what is not expected, because we don't want ambiguity to seep into our agenda. When that happens, it's challenging to make sure you remain focused, especially in this environment that's so variable. So we make sure that we're very clear on those expectations.
Yeah, and what are some of those expectations? Is it just about making sure you're taking risks? Like, is it just kind of being judicious? Like, double click into that a little bit.
Well, of course, we start with some of the financial expectations. With any, it's a gift to receive resources, but it also elevates those ROIs that we expect you to deliver. And then, in-market performance expectations. So, market share, revenue growth, and also the role they play in the category, which is really important for all of us to make sure that we're continuing to keep a focus on growing the category. It's healthy for us, healthy for our retailers as well. So those are a few of the expectations that we give. And to your point about taking risks, we talk a lot about being bold and decisive and playing to win. We talk a lot about playing to win. And in order to do that and take those risks, we need to create a really safe environment where people trust one another and aren't afraid to fail. And when you do, you fail fast. We talk a lot about having that growth mindset, which means that a challenge or a failure is really an opportunity to grow and learn and do better next time.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about just specific innovations within your category. I think we saw in the video you guys have gotten a lot of buzz recently for some of your limited time offers. If I take a step back, though, and look at the industry as a whole, sometimes it feels a little bit noisy. It kind of feels like every week there's a new flavor of a product. There's a product that sounds entirely disgusting and is really just about grabbing headlines. How are you guys thinking about LTOs in this environment?
Yeah, well, we hold the team to a very high bar. So although we like to surprise and delight our consumers, we certainly want to make sure it tastes amazing. So some of my favorite days are when we're doing our testings, and we have some very off-the-wall ideas. Many of them consumer-inspired, but many of them inspired by our employees or even our customers. We work collaboratively with companies like McCormick to come up with incredible ideas. An example of an unexpected flavor was Goldfish Old Bay, which I will tell you, when I first heard of it, I wasn't quite sure. It sold out in 8 hours on McCormick's site, so it was definitely a hit. It was one of the highest velocity crackers when we launched it in the entire cracker segment. So we were really pleased with those results, but we wanted to make sure that it was delivering something unique to the consumer, unique to the category, and also delivering on the financials.
Yeah, so that was kind of where I was going to go next. Talk to me a little bit about KPIs there, because I think, as we were just talking about, for some companies it really is just, I think, about getting impressions and getting consumers talking about it, but it seems like it's a little bit more for you.
Yeah, well, limited time offers create that buzz and that excitement, and right now, even with all the economic challenges, consumers are telling us 69% still want to try something new and want to try something trendy. So innovation is still really important to them, and it's really important to the category. And what we find when we drive that innovation and drive that excitement, consumers not only buy the limited time offer, they also buy a core product within the category. So really, it lifts the total brand as well as the category, and that's really important. We also have looked at our limited time offers to expand on household penetration because we now can appeal to a broader audience. Another example of that would be Goldfish Frank's Red Hot Sauce. So definitely one of the first times that we worked with more of an adult flavor, spicier, and that helped us grow household penetration within all family.
Yeah, and I guess this is going to be a common theme throughout this conversation, but going back to sort of resource allocation, I think it's obviously incredibly important to your consumers as well as your retail partners that you do still have the core product on the shelf. So how are you balancing that dynamic?
Yes, that is quite a conversation often these days. So capacity and the tension that the last couple of years have created, have been really challenging, and it really forced us to take a look at our total portfolio. And so taking a challenge and turning it into an opportunity for us was really about stepping back. We're all facing things like labor shortages, raw material shortages, truck availability, and even where we invested in capacity, the lead time to get the right equipment or to get access to engineers, different skilled labor that we needed, it was very much delayed. So with that in mind, to your point, we made sure that we were looking across the portfolio, making really tough choices. Yep. We brought a team together, and we actually wound up discontinuing 577 SKUs, almost 16% of the portfolio. We did this in collaboration with our customers because there's a lot of lead time that's involved in that, and of course across the right functions. I will tell you though, there's always someone who loves a product, so I'm sure many of you have been in those conversations. It's tough and you had to make tough calls, and this was another great example where the team took bold actions, took risks, really played to win. And then this allowed us to free up the right line time so that we can innovate, still selectively. Our priority was still the core products, but then innovate selectively to drive that excitement.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Just as long as you don't ever discontinue flavor blasted goldfish, we'll be on good terms. I want to stick with goldfish, not just because it's my favorite of your products, but you guys alluded in your video to a very successful campaign that you guys had on TikTok, which was a little bit surprising to me. Aside from myself, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily think of goldfish as an adult brand. It's typically thought of in relation to kids. So talk to me a little bit about why you went to TikTok and what some of the results were that you saw.
Sure. You can imagine, especially in the beginning of the pandemic when kids shifted to online learning, Goldfish, one of our greatest drive periods is back to school. So a lot of things were disrupted, and that for us was a pretty significant change in consumer behavior. So as a team, we stepped back and thought about how can we shift from the kid to the kid at heart and really focus on a broader audience, more all family. So we looked at our insights, and it was clear, even though maybe they were hiding it, 40% of adults already ate goldfish. Of our consumption was eaten by adults. And then they ate goldfish by the handful. And these two insights really sparked this idea of go for the handful, which we showed a bit of in the video. And if you're not familiar with it, we tapped into Bobby and Tobias Harris, who are both basketball players. Bobby happens to have the biggest hands in basketball. Do you want to guess how many goldfish he could hold in his hand?
Feels like a trick question. I feel like I could maybe fit like 50, so I'm going to say 150.
No. So maybe all of you can think about a number in your head, because Bobby can fit 301 goldfish in his hand. It's part of the whole experience, and so we launched this really engaging how many goldfish can you fit in your hand on TikTok, which we know is the fastest growing social platform. In 3 days, we reached 10 billion views on TikTok. We actually won Culture Driver of the Year in 2021 because of that. So we took the fastest growing social platform, we took this new insight, we appealed to a whole new audience, and we made something fun and engaging, and consumers just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and it seems like it kind of circles back to what you were talking about earlier and growing sort of the whole share of house with your growth strategies. Well, I think the last question that I want to ask you, just as it pertains to some of the specific brands in your portfolio, is probably one that's on a lot of folks' mind in the audience. We've seen a lot of activity in this space, right, as it pertains to the specific brands that belong to organizations. We saw Kellogg's decision to do the spinoff. We saw Mondelez acquire Cliff on kind of the other side of that equation. You've already kind of called out 8 that are power. You have some other smaller brands. What are your thoughts on the composition of your portfolio going forward?
Yeah, so most may know, but right when I started, actually about 3 years ago, we were integrating Snyder's-Lance and Pepperidge Farm, so two $2 billion businesses. So it was quite a merger of some amazing brands. And right now, we're extremely happy with the categories we're in. We know that snacking as behavior is growing. It continues to grow. The categories we're in, between salty, cookie, cracker, and even bakery, are big and growing. So we feel great about the categories we're in. And so for us, it would be about tuck-in acquisitions. So something that would be strategically relevant, perhaps a white space within those categories. It would need to meet certain financial guidelines. And of course, It would need to be something that we can make sure we can integrate easily, especially having just went through that ourselves.
Yes, yeah, and dealing with some of the external constraints that you were just talking about.
Right.
Well, let's stick with that because I think, as you mentioned before, the title of this session is Turning Business Dynamics into Advantages, which you guys clearly worked very hard to do during the pandemic. But I'm curious, as we come out the other side of this, are there any permanent changes to the ways that you work, to your organization as a whole, that are really going to kind of carry you through and make sure you continue to work in that way going forward?
Yeah, so what we learned very early on in the pandemic, especially our plants, is just every day was something new, was a new challenge they had to overcome and navigate and learn from. And just when you thought things were a little calmer, perhaps some new challenge presented itself. And so we actually restructured our operational organization to really empower the organizations that come into contact with the problem first. So philosophically, as a leader, I believe that wherever that pain point is, the closer you have your employees and your leaders empowered to address that pain point, the faster and better that will get addressed. So we essentially took some centralized resources, we embedded them into the operations, whether it's quality, engineering, maintenance, safety, HR, especially with all of the labor challenges we had, really empowering local HR and training within the plants. So decentralization and empowerment were a big theme. The other piece that we did was for our brand teams, especially the power brands, we made sure that we created these agile work teams that were cross-functional. I mean, there were points last year that we had either raw material disruptions or packaging disruptions or labor disruptions. It was almost one a week that we were having to solve really complex issues together. So we made sure that they were set up with the right processes and the right empowerment, the right decision rights, to make those decisions fast so we can keep the business moving forward. And that's something that I want to make sure that we continue, because it's amazing what we were able to accomplish in those times of crisis together and having those collaborative and trusting relationships. And so I think as a business, we'll definitely continue to perform better.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about sort of the factory side, because it makes me think about the retail stores, right? And I was talking with Tim Simmons from Sam's Club yesterday and just kind of talking about the fact that a lot of times innovation can come from the store associates. So it's interesting to see that replicated on the CPG side. Well, how about the other relationships that have been changing in this environment, which is the relationships that you guys have had with your retail partners? Heard about some fantastic collaborations happening during the pandemic, quite frankly, out of necessity. But what are you seeing as we're coming out of the other side? Are these still friendly relationships? How is this going to manifest going forward?
Yeah, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and what we were able to do together the last 2 to 3 years was really amazing. I felt that we came together and rallied for a common purpose, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, where we didn't know exactly what was happening and how long this would last. Our ability to focus on a common purpose, which was really getting food to American families. And that collaboration is something that I really hope continues. I've seen it continue, just working on shared pain points and really helping each other. Simple things, like as we navigated supply disruptions, talking about how do we manage the planogram the right way, can we be more flexible, getting better forecasts, just working together in order writing and maximizing trucks. So some of the more tactical things, but really helped us unlock some opportunities. And I just hope as an industry that we continue to collaborate at that level, and I think we'll all benefit from it.
Yep. It sounds quite similar to what Vince Jones from Pepsi was talking about yesterday, and just kind of finding synergies all across the supply chain and all the ways that you guys work together. Well, we're down to our last couple of minutes here, and so I wanted to end on a personal note and ask you about Val the human rather than Val, the president of Campbell Snacks. I think if I'm sitting out in the audience and I see you and you are the president of a multi-billion-dollar business, I probably think, wow, she has every answer. She's got it all figured out, but I happen to know that continuous learning is incredibly important to you. So would love just to hear a little bit about your leadership philosophy and just kind of how you're continuing to develop yourself as a leader.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about a growth mindset. There's a really great book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, and she really talks about the difference between a growth mindset and a set mindset or a fixed mindset. And as I mentioned earlier, in a growth mindset, you acknowledge that you don't know everything, that you can learn from others, you can learn from experiences, you could play that forward, and that when you get feedback, it's truly a gift and constructive, and you can continue to grow. And so I think that's critically important. I think if, again, anything has taught us that the last few years, that's exceptionally important. About almost a little over 3 years ago, I decided to go back to school. I went to USC and got my doctorate part-time online at USC in their Rossier School of Education. So it was focused on organizational change and leadership. And so it was interesting, the timing of that. It was a little challenging to do, given some of the demands of my job the last couple of years. Also, I have 2 kids at home.
You're not busy.
Not busy at all, but
it's fine.
I will tell you, through all of these challenges in the last couple of years, it was amazing. We met on Saturdays, and I met with like incredible industry leaders that all wanted to make a difference, were really smart, incredibly diverse, so they showed up with a different experiences, different backgrounds, different educations, and we were able to just talk about how to learn and grow and support each other. We really support each other through some of the darkest moments, and all of us focused on theory into practice. So we took wicked problems in society and wrote our dissertations on how to fix that. And so that's exactly what I intend to do with my dissertation topic, which is really to leave society in a better place. So it was a really amazing way to just learn and grow.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Well, thank you, Val, for taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you guys all for joining, and now we have some words of inspiration to go off with, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.